Welcome back to Tax to You, the practical tax channel where we answer all of your tax related questions. Today I'm going to be showing you how to declare a capital gain on the 23-24 self-assessment tax return, and it should take me no more than 15 minutes. To do this, I'm going to show you the entries that you'll need to make under the Tailor Your Return section of the self-assessment. I'll then show you how to complete the capital gains pages, and I'm going to show you how the tax liability is then being calculated. Before we do get into it today, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more helpful tax content. Submit your questions in the comments below and we will endeavour to get them answered either in the form of a reply or possibly a dedicated video just like this one. You can also find us at tax2u.co.uk because although our aim is always to educate our clients as much as possible and share this information, we understand that tax can be confusing, stressful and time consuming, and that's where we can step in and help, saving you time and money. Check out the thousands of Trustpilot reviews from clients who trusted us to do just that. Our services include obtaining CIS tax refunds, completion of self-assessments and even closing down your self-employment once you've finished trading. You'll find a full list of services offered on our website. Now let's begin with how to tailor the self-assessment tax return. So here I am, I'm logged into my government gateway and I'm on the Tailor Your Return section of the self-assessment. This is a 23-24 self-assessment tax return. There are 3 pages to the Tailor Your Return section and I'm on page 1. These are a series of yes/no answer questions, and essentially HMRC are just trying to set the tax return up for your own situation. So if you had employment income or self-employed income, you would need to tell them yes here. In this example, I just want to declare capital gains. So to locate the question that relates to capital gains that will then generate the capital gains pages, it's page 1 that I want of the Tailor Your Return section, and I'm going to scroll right to the bottom of this page. Of course, if you did have employment income, self-employed income, this is where you'll declare it as well, but I'm only looking for capital gains, so I'll scroll straight to the bottom and here it is. If you disposed of any chargeable assets or had any chargeable gains, or you wish to claim an allowable loss or make any other claim or election, do you need to complete the capital gains section? So I'm going to say yes to this question and then I'll save and continue. Now if this does seem like too much hassle, or maybe you need some assistance with your tax return, don't forget to check us out at tax2u.co.uk where our accountants can take the stress out of preparing and submitting your return to HMRC, all while saving you time and money. Next up, let's look at completing the capital gains section. Just to show you how simple this is, because I only want to generate the capital gains section, I'm going to ignore all the other questions and I'm going to say no. So now that we've tailored the return and I've told them that I have a capital gain to declare, I'm going to scroll down the fill in your return page. And you can see some of this information has already been entered. So you can see we've got a blue mark or blue entered sign next to the Tell Us About You section, blue marks next to the Tailor Your Return section. But when we get down to the capital gains page, that's the page that we've just generated, I can click on the link below and then I'm able to provide information about my capital gains in the tax year. Now there's a little bit of information here and a couple of drop downs if you need to use them, but we do have one question or a series of questions at the bottom that we need to work through. Did you dispose of chargeable assets worth more than £50,000? Now this is a bit of a funny question because you don't actually pay capital gains tax if you haven't made a gain. So even if I disposed of a £100,000 asset, if it cost me £100,000, then I haven't made a gain and I won't have to pay any capital gains tax. But HMRC are interested where you're disposing of big ticket items, high value items. So that's why they're asking here if you disposed of assets worth more than 50,000. So even if I did dispose of something, I didn't make a gain on it, but it was worth 100,000 when I disposed on it, then I would actually need to tell them about that here. In this case, I'm going to say no, because the value of my disposal was less than 50,000, but that's why they're asking the question. Are losses deducted? Now, the way it works with capital gains is you might dispose of one asset and make a gain. You might then dispose of a separate asset and make a loss. Where you do make a capital loss, the rules are that you have to use that loss or offset that loss against gains in the same tax year. If you don't have any gains in the same tax year, then you can declare that loss on the tax return and then carry it forward indefinitely until you do, and then utilize it. If I say yes to losses being deducted, I'm then presented with a third question. Are your total chargeable gains before deducting losses more than £6,000? Now, the reason £6,000 comes up, this is currently the capital gains allowance. So if you have gains under 6,000, then you don't have to pay any tax. It's covered by your allowance. And if I tell HMRC that my gains weren't actually more than 6,000, they're going to start wondering, well, why do you need to complete the return then? Why are you trying to complete this section if you don't have any taxable gains? Because it's going to be covered by your allowance. The one situation where you might want to do that, we've mentioned already, is where you've got a capital loss, you want to declare it and then carry it forward, or maybe you've got losses from prior periods that you want to carry forward. And that's why we're generating this question at the bottom here. Do you want to claim an allowable capital loss or make any other capital gains claim or election for the year? So if I say no, I don't want to claim a loss, and I save and continue, then they're going to tell me you don't actually need to complete the capital gains section, because even if you did have a gain, it's clearly below the allowance anyway. I'm going to head back to this page, and I'm going to go back to our question, are losses deducted? I'm going to say no. What I'm going to declare here is a simple gain. One transaction, one gain, no losses. Are my gains more than 6,000? I'll say yes, because I want the next page to generate. And then the next page is simply explaining to you what's required of you when reporting a capital gain. And essentially it says you'll need to provide a capital gains computation. Essentially, it's a working of how your gain is calculated. So I sold my asset for this much, it cost me this much, I had these costs involved in the transaction, and this is my gain. You need to provide that information for every gain that you have. Now, HMRC do provide their own computation, their own worksheet here, so you can use that. What I would recommend, if you have a couple of gains or maybe a single gain, then use their worksheet. In some situations, you might want to provide your own workings, and that would be the other option. So that would normally apply where you've got lots of disposals, lots of gains and losses that you need to declare, and the information won't fit onto their worksheets. For example, if you're buying and selling shares, you might dispose of 100 different share types or shares in 100 different companies. So you'd have a lot of computations to work out there. In that situation, normally what you would do is detail all of those in an Excel spreadsheet and then attach the Excel spreadsheet. In this situation, I just want to declare one gain, so I'm going to use their computation. I'll say yes, and I'll save and continue. And then if I scroll down on the next page, there's some optional information here. So you can provide a reference for your disposal. So if I had disposed of Amazon shares, for example, I can then select the type of asset. Those would be listed shares and other securities. Description of the asset. So they'll give you a little bit of guidance here. So type and number of shares sold. So I could just say 200 times Amazon shares. I then have a date of disposal. If we go with the 1st of April 2024 to fall in the tax year. Disposal proceeds or market value. So market value they ask for because sometimes you'll give away an asset. If you give away an asset or you give it away below its market value, then HMRC would normally still deem that you've made a gain, well, that you've disposed of it and you might have made a gain on it. So they would just take the market value in that situation, even if you haven't generated any income from it. In this case, let's assume that I've sold them for £200 a share. So I've made £40,000 of disposal proceeds. You've then got incidental costs on disposals. These would vary by asset. In the case of shares, it's likely to be a transaction fee for the broker. So maybe if I had to pay £100 to the broker to dispose of those shares, then I would enter that detail in here, and that would bring my net disposal proceeds down to £39,900. You then asked about the date of acquisition. So again, you'd need to look back through your records. If I go with the 5th of October 2013, and we're looking at the cost of those shares at that point. What did I buy them for? So in this case, I'm going to go with a nice round figure of £5,000. Again, if you were given those shares, it may be the market value at the time. Incidental costs of acquisition. Again, my broker might have charged me £50 to purchase those shares. Improvement costs won't usually apply to shares and securities, but a good example would be on investment properties. Maybe you've done an extension to the property. You might want to detail the cost of that here. And then I'm left with my total gain or loss of £34,850. Deduction, if any, in respect of reliefs and elections, this would be rare. But if you are entering any kind of, you've got some kind of election or relief that you're applying for, you would enter the amount here and you would enter the detail of that election below. And I'm going to move on to the next page. I can then see a summary of my capital gains on this worksheet. And in this situation, I only have listed shares and securities. I don't have unlisted below, I don't have other property, and I don't have residential property. So I've got one disposal at the top, £40,000, allowable costs £5,150. That's £5,000 of purchasing the shares. It's £100 transaction fee when I sold the shares and £50 transaction fee when I purchased the shares, leaving me with my gain of £34,850. As this is my only gain, I'm going to say no. And I'm happy that this is my only gain. This is all the detail that HMRC would need. I don't need to attach anything else outside of this. Now, that is my gain declared on the tax return. Following this, there are a series of questions about losses and other reliefs that might apply. If you have a very basic setup, they're usually not going to be applicable. So like me, you would be able to just work through that section, tell HMRC that they're not applicable where you need to, and then work your way through to the view your calculation page. Remember, what I've demonstrated here is how to enter a basic capital gain. To get to this point, you would need to have calculated these figures yourself, which of course can be difficult. So if you want one of our agents to assist with this or any other part of the self-assessment tax return from self-employment to CIS, just follow the link below or head straight to our website at tax2u.co.uk. Now let's take a look at the tax calculation. So here I am on the summary page of the calculation, and this is just going to tell me the total payable. So the total amount payable for me, my total tax liability, would be £2,885. HMRC are not asking for a payment on account. Payments on account do normally apply when your tax liability exceeds £1,000, but because this is a capital gain, HMRC won't be expecting me to make that a gain next year. I've already got rid of the asset, so they're not asking for any payments on account. If I scroll down to the bottom, I can then click on view and print the full calculation, and this will give me a bit of a breakdown of how the tax is actually being calculated. So you can see here this top section relates to other income, really. So employment income, self-employment, they're deducting a personal allowance, but I don't have any other income. I've only declared a capital gain, remember. So this section doesn't really apply. It's just being auto-populated. Below that, you can see that they're applying income tax to my income, but I don't have any. So my income tax bill is £0 down here. But below that, that's where you'll see your capital gain. So my taxable capital gain is £28,850. Now that's lower than the £34,850 that I had declared, and that's because they've already deducted off my capital gains allowance of £6,000. So this is the taxable amount here. I'm then being taxed at 10%. Now there are different rates of capital gains tax depending on the assets that you're disposing of. 18 and 28%, for example, when you're disposing of investment properties, but for all other assets it tends to be 10% if it falls within your basic rate tax band, if you have any remaining, or 20% if it falls in the higher or additional rate tax band. You can see here the full amount is being taxed at 10%, so my total liability is £2,885, and that amount will be payable by the 31st of January 2025. And that was how to declare a capital gain to HMRC on the self-assessment tax return for the 23-24 tax year within 15 minutes. After viewing this video, you should now be able to tailor your tax return so it's set up for your own personal circumstances, complete the capital gains pages of the tax return, and understand the tax calculation. Don't forget, if you're having any trouble, at Tax2You we provide an easy-to-use self-assessment service and would be happy to help whatever your situation. Just follow the link below. That is all for today. Don't forget to check us out at tax2you.co.uk and subscribe to the channel for more helpful tax content. Thank you for watching. See you next time.